Nice to meet
Hey,
you.
Gregor, thanks for having us, man.
No
Much
worries. So
appreciated.
you are going to do a session on Pimp Your Windows Terminal. So I'm going to shut up now, and this is recording, so we'll put this on YouTube. It's already live on YouTube right now, but
Awesome.
I'll just mute myself and leave you to it. So
That's cool.
look
I'll just
forward to
shout
it.
if
So
I need you, if that's all
yeah,
right.
yeah, just shout. Go for it.
Oh, wonderful. All right, fantastic. Thanks for having us, Gregor. Yeah, Luke Evans. I'm here today to talk to you about Pimp Your Windows Terminal. And to be honest, I had a plan for this one. It's rather informal. It's kind of just to take you through kind of how we can, what is Windows Terminal and how can we make better use of it and how can we make it really cool, well, mainly look cool, but also make it quite powerful is the other important thing. Now, the name is quite old and quite cliched. So I first off, I put some Christmas lights around, but on top of that, I think it wouldn't be complete without my man Exhibit popping up here just to help kind of add to it. Usually I keep my decks quite serious, but this is probably as far as I would go in terms of making it a bit crazier. Now, a tiny bit about me. I'm going to keep it quite brief. Solutions architect. I used to work at Microsoft. I've worked at a number of different places. If you could follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter, it would be much appreciated. It's under Luke Evans Tech. That's usually where I rock and roll. My handle at most places is the thing. Now, first and foremost, before I hop into a demo, I would say, look, I'm not planning to go in too much depth. So if you're already familiar with Windows Terminal, customizing it, this probably isn't the session for you. I'll save you the effort and time of that one. This is for people that are kind of coming to the Windows Terminal world kind of anew, and how to get going from the ground up is the important one. Now, we have got elements of a live demo, so I'm hoping that the demo gods are with me today, but I will let you know before we get cracking with that. Now, first and foremost, what I typically like to do with any sort of presentation is kind of a who, what, why, when, where, how. Today, let's kind of talk about the what it is. So I think first and foremost is shells in Windows and kind of a history of shells in Windows. So every release of Windows or every release of DOS and Windows has included some sort of command line interface tool, which is a shell. Now, kind of the command prompt was the first one, and that actually command.com came out in MS-DOS, Windows 98, Windows 90X, 98, 95, yada, yada, so on and so forth. I think the crazy thing was this was initially released in 1980. So you're talking 41 years ago, command.com came out, which is absolutely nuts. So command prompts typically have a mixture of built-in commands. So, pre-built ones like nettime, or the ability to call kind of standalone executables. So you can call, executables on your file system and pull them in. Now it had a set of kind of scripting language called Batch, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Certainly, if you've been around a while, I'm sure you've suffered Batch and you kind of know what it's all about. It's the output of when you're working in command prompt and command, .com, it's string. So it's just string output. It's not like objects, which is kind of, we'll look at a bit later in terms of PowerShell and when it gets a bit more fancy. But, multiple scripting languages were introduced throughout the life cycle of command.exe. So you had WMI, you had VB script and JScript. So we can see command.exe came along next, Windows 98, Windows NT, and later kind of, you can still access command.exe in Windows 11 today. Now, this is where it gets a bit more exciting, and my little timeline comes along, and we basically had PowerShell, and that originally started formulating in kind of 2002. It was code name Monad, I think is the pronunciation of it, but it's built on the .NET framework, and it's absolutely awesome, is what I would say. I think the key thing here is it's an object-oriented language and shell, and it follows kind of a common syntax, so a verb and noun pair. Now, originally PowerShell was available for Windows XP, Windows Vista, Server 2008, and later. It came out originally in September 26, 2006, and it kind of changed the game for me, certainly, in terms of the way that we can work with these things. Object-oriented just blows my mind compared to the string output that we had in command.com and command.exe. Now, PowerShell originally was kind of built for Windows only, as you can see here, but it was very well received. Like I said, awesome. I love it. But I think, since 2006, organizations' technology composition is drastically altered. Way back when we had Windows everything from server, to OS, whatever it may be. We had Windows phones, all that sort of jazz. Now we're working in a completely different world. Hardware and software from different vendors. We have on cloud, we have hybrid environments, we have on premise, and even multi-cloud, I should say. And end users are accessing the above using a multitude of devices and operating systems. So Microsoft wanted to be able to kind of unify this, and they work towards basically PowerShell core is the kind of next evolution. And this was originally part of Nano Server. It runs on .NET Core, so it's built on .NET Core, or as it's known, .NET 5. And it runs natively. This is my favorite part on Windows, Linux, and macOS is the great thing. So we can basically pick it up and use it wherever. So it doesn't matter what cloud we're working on, what user device. The great news is we can load up PowerShell and we can start working with it. Is the great thing. It's open sourced. Another great thing. We can contribute this. We can view the code. We can see kind of what's happening with it. It's the nice thing. So I much prefer working with open source projects wherever possible. It's just the way I like to do things. And the other thing is, when this came out, is originally called PowerShell Core. We've had some kind of renames along the way. The original PowerShell from 2006, or PowerShell 5.x, whatever it may be, has been renamed to Windows PowerShell, and it introduced kind of several challenges in terms of compatibility. Now, PowerShell Core 6.2 was the last version of PowerShell Core, and we kind of arrived to where we are today, which is kind of just PowerShell 7 or PowerShell. Now, in December 2021, I think it was maybe 2 days ago, we had 7.21, and this is basically built on .NET 5. Again, it is helped with compatibility in terms of moving from PowerShell Core or Windows PowerShell to PowerShell. Now, why do I bother with all these shells and what does it all mean? I think the important thing is we have a whole heap of different shells in Windows, and the real challenge is how, so many different shells that we have. And the question is, how can we manage these better, or how can we use them better? Because at the moment, I'm loading up command prompt, I'm loading up Windows PowerShell, I'm loading up PowerShell, I'm loading up PuTTY for SSH, whatever it may be. The idea is we've got Windows Terminal to help solve this one. So the idea of Windows Terminal is basically the ability to run multiple shells in one terminal. And the idea here is that we can have multiple profiles, either shell, app, tool. It could be PowerShell. It could be Windows PowerShell. The original command prompt. We can run Windows subsystem for Linux, so we can use Ubuntu. We can SSH. We can SSH into traditional Unix systems. We can go into Azure Cloud Shell or IoT devices. So the idea is to combine all your shells into one area, and basically that is Windows Terminal. Now, the only gotcha really is kind of, as the name suggests, it's kind of a given, but it's only available for Windows. Now, not to worry, terminals are long existed in kind of macOS and Unix. I think the thing is you can use like iTerm2 for macOS, and Unix has its own terminal app, and there's a whole heap of them out there. Now, my favorite part about Windows Terminal, and this is probably what I'll cover most of the day, but it's really about Windows Terminal, is the power is the customization and the customizability of the platform. So we can have multiple profiles for different shells. We can control each shell or profile. And fantastic news, it's very much like VS Code is probably the easiest way to think about it. There's a few features that I really like that have been ported from VS Code or very similar to it. And again, anyone can review the product. It's open source. It's out there for anyone to look at and contribute to. So we can see what kind of features are coming down the line. And, that's a very brief overview of Windows Terminal and kind of why it exists. So the kind of the background, why is it useful? Why would you want to take this up? And kind of the next thing is really going to be, what does it actually look like? How do I get it? And how do I start customizing the thing? So for me, there's 3 different ways to get it. You can go download it from the GitHub releases. I probably wouldn't recommend that. You can get it from the Windows Store. That's probably my preferred method, simply because you can go get it and it keeps itself updated. And on top of that, we can basically use a package manager. So my new favorite method of installing things, even if it's from Windows stores, is things like winget. So we can use the command line interface for winget and go and pull these things automatically from Windows Store. So that would be how to get it. Now we go to the fun part, which is really the demo and kind of how do I get using this and how do I start making it look pretty funky and pretty powerful. So I'm going to I've jumped ahead a bit too far there. But what I'm going to do is hopefully hop to kind of a vanilla VM, and in that vanilla VM, we're going to try taking it from scratch and basically getting Windows Terminal kind of up and running and customize it and kind of a quick run through of what we can do with it. Now, first and foremost, I will have to say I cheated a bit. I went and installed Terminal from the Windows Store prior to this, and VS Code were the kind of 2 tools that I wanted in place. But if we just load up Windows Terminal, we can see it here. And by default, you can see it's Windows PowerShell just at the top. If we click open a new tab, so it's a tabbed interface is the important thing. And we can see the different kind of shells that are available to choose from. Now, the first thing I would say is, look, you can see Windows PowerShell is in bold. That means it's the default kind of shell that we're going to use. But we're going to get to how we can customize and tweak that. Now, the first thing I would probably do that I really like from VS Code is kind of the command palette. So again, I think it's the same commands, which is Control-Shift-P, but we can search within terminal. And, if I wanted to start looking for settings, you can just search for settings and it gives you the shortcuts and also the ability to do that. I think for me, a quick example of this is you might want to use focus mode. Yeah. And you can see that drops off kind of the surrounding interface for it. And we're just focusing on that. Now, obviously, we're going to just toggle them back. But the idea really here is the ability to use the kind of palette, which is I love from VS Code. So I think it's awesome having it here as well. I think the first thing I would probably do, and I'm just going to load up some additional ones. So we've got a Windows PowerShell one. If we wanted to load up another, you can Control-Shift-4, as it said in there, and we're in kind of PowerShell 7, or PowerShell as it's known now. And you can quite easily just see, if we do PS version, we'll go have a quick look, and you can see we're in 7.21. And again, we can also get PowerShell now from Windows Store. And again, another recommended way of doing it. apt-get or winget is also in there, so we can just use all three of them to kind of keep everything up to date and manage this kind of stack, as it were. The real power, I think, for me, really lies in kind of the settings of this terminal and how we can set it up. So first and foremost, let's get with the most important thing, and that's obviously going to be we need to change it to dark mode. There's no doubt in my mind. I can't abide with this bright colors, so let's get dark mode going first, and then we'll start walking through the other ones. So I think let's go back to startup and we'll walk through it. So for me, the default profile is what you're going to load whenever you load terminal. What are you going to get first? And profiles are really the cornerstone of terminal. They're really going to be what it is. And like I said previously, it could be Windows PowerShell. It could be a command prompt. It could be a tool or app that you want to launch. It may be SSH to a different system. And it could be Windows subsystem for Linux. And it may be an Ubuntu server that you want to basically load up when you load up terminal is the great thing. So for me, I'm immediately going to change that to PowerShell. I'm probably going to launch it on machine startup. Launch mode, I'm not sure. Many people are going to go with focus or maximize focus or full screen. I'm pretty sure there's some crazy mode in there called Quake mode, if I remember specifically. I think it might be, oh gosh, I can't remember the one, but there's an absolute crazy one. Let's see. So you can summon Quake window. I'm just thinking of different ones, and that will take up the top half of your screen. I'm going to give that one a miss for the moment, but that's a kind of another mode that it can run in. For me, on this one, I'll probably just leave it as default. The new instance behavior, I won't dwell too long on this, but this is for people that use virtual desktops. I'm not usually a big virtual desktop fan, so I'll kind of skip over that one usually. There's some easy ones here. Interaction. I mean, for me, I want to automatically copy the selection to the clipboard. I want plain text only. And I think for me, that's kind of the key ones here. I'm not really going to bother with most of the other ones. And we'll get to the fun stuff probably now is the one. So appearance. So there's a few different ways of working with appearance here. We can have a default appearance for the terminal, but on top of that, we also have profiles for those shells, and we can control the appearance for each of those. And, if you really want, you can have crazy backgrounds, you can have crazy different colors, different fonts for each one of these. But typically, with the way I like to play it is more with a straight bat, and I typically go for a default one that I like to use across most of them. So for me, like I said previously, we've got to have dark mode. We can't mess with light mode. I think the cool thing is, what else would I change here? And I'm just going through my own personal preference. I would obviously have a look and see what you guys think you like the look of. But for me, we're going to lose system default. We don't need to change the language for this. Acrylic is pretty cool. I think that's where we can start customizing kind of the color of this and the opacity of it. But for the moment, I'm going to quickly skip over and we're going to go have a look at color schemes. Now, color schemes, again, if you want to start messing with them, it's great fun, but I'll take you through what I would normally do. You can change that, and we're going to say Solarized Dark, for example, and these are typical IDE, so Integrated Development Environment themes is what you usually encounter. And of course, let's have a look. I didn't actually change it for the profile, so that's not going to change. So let's just go back, and I'm going to go hop on down to PowerShell and Appearance, and we can go change it there, and that's where it's going to be, actually, my bad. So we can see we're going to change that one. I'm going to save that, and if we go back out, we can see that the theme has changed for PowerShell. But if we launch kind of Windows PowerShell, that's going to retain the old theme. So you can quite easily start building different kind of, I guess, theming and help it easier in your mind to understand exactly where you are and what you're working with. Now, the theme that I would always go to, my go-to themes typically, I'm going to go down to profiles and I'm going to change the appearance of these. So let's go get a new color scheme. Now, we got a couple of inbuilt ones, but again, like VS Code, one of my favorite things is the ability to have all our settings in a JSON file. So the great thing here is we can load up kind of our whole settings for our terminal, and we have them in clear text is the great thing. So we can take this text, we can version control it, we can store it in Git. I do have a little cheeky tip at the end where you can hard link it. One of the biggest complaints I have about Windows Terminal at the moment is the ability that the settings kind of live in your app data, that they're not persisted. You can't synchronize them easily across your machines without some kind of, I would say, shortcuts and hacks in the background. Now, if I wanted to get a kind of a new theme or a custom theme, there's a wonderful website out there that we can go. So I'm just going to go search the web and we'll look for Windows Terminal themes. Bingo. And someone out there has made this wonderful website. So all you have to do to get your own, you can start browsing through them and choose exactly which terminal theme you want, really. So for me, there's only one choice out there, and it's typically Dracula is the one I always rock and roll with. So probably my favorite theme. And you can see VS Code's already got it. But for me, I'm always going to get the Dracula one. And once we get to it, we've got Dracula here, and you just hit Get Theme, and it's added to your clipboard. We're just going to minimize that, and we're going to scroll down into our kind of settings and find where our themes are. Now, for me, I have VS Code set up in a way that I can easily see the colors that it's going to be. I'm just going to go slot in here and put Dracula in there, and I'm going to just add that into my settings file, save the file, and close that. Now, the great thing is we should be able to choose Dracula, and we can see it there. So for me, my defaults, I'm going to default Dracula everywhere is the important thing. So now you can see the color scheme for Dracula has changed for Windows PowerShell, but the original or the PowerShell one that I set on its own is basically still going to be the Solarized Dark. Now for me, let's go change that one back actually is the thing. So I'm going to go change that to Dracula as well because that's my favorite theme. Again, you can set all different themes for each one and kind of choose what you want to do there. But for me, I like to keep it consistent. Now, the next thing I would probably look at is kind of the font and how we might choose the font. Now, one thing that we really do want to probably use is a kind of a nerd font is the one. And these basically allow us to use glyphs and icons and basically, what's the other word that I'm looking for? Ligatures, I think is the one. If I'm right or wrong, we'll find out. But we typically want to use nerd fonts. And now, here we go, glyphs, icons. You can basically use text to turn it into icons and make it look really funky is the great thing. So typically, I would always go get a nerd font to use for terminal. And for me, you know, you can choose any one you like on here. We'll go choose Droid Sans Mono today, I think, for example. And all you got to do is quite easy is download that and you can just install them at that point. Again, you probably want to choose the Windows ones. We're going to just extract this out and install those Windows ones. Once that's done, we're just going to go set that in our terminal and use that as our font. I'm pretty sure I'm going to close it and reopen it, and then we can use that font in here. Now you should see, I think I can see it, the background of this is ever so slightly dark, so let's retain that. But we're going to go to defaults, appearance. You can see we've got Dracula, but now, all being well, we can see we've got the nerd font here, and you really want a nerd font for some of the stuff that we're planning to do ever so slightly later. But for me, we'll save that one, and that's kind of our font is going to change immediately. The next things we probably want are going to be whether your cursor, you can choose bar, vintage, underscore. For me, I just leave that as the same. Now, if you want to get really funky, we can start setting background images for each different shell that we want to run. Now, I know this is the festive one, so what I was thinking here is a bit of a laugh. And to make it really horrible, we're probably going to go with, let's think, we're going to go with a Christmas background, and we're going to choose a GIF. So we can use animated GIFs as well. I found some horrible ones in my testing, so let's go have a look and see what we fancy today. So we'll just go and you can just choose whatever you like. Oh, come on, is this good enough? I should have probably prepped exactly the one I like. Oh, bingo, here we go. So if we save this one, we're just going to whack it in our downloads, and we're going to go to set a background image for this. Now, I'm not going to do it to all of them. I'm going to go choose a specific shell. For example, I'm going to choose Windows PowerShell, I think, for this one, because I don't want to use it on all of my shells. If I go choose that GIF, let's go have a look and see if this actually works. So we do it live. Oh gosh, here we go. And if we choose kind of the Windows PowerShell, you can see we have that animated GIF as our background now. Now, as horrible as it may be, it's got a nice festive theme to it. So it hopefully is keeping it in line with kind of the whole thing. And, you know, we're getting somewhere. It's already starting to look more pimped out at this point. So we have kind of a custom font. We have a custom theme. We have a custom background. The next thing you can do to take it kind of to the next level of nerdiness, I would typically do, is kind of, let's have a look. We can start messing with kind of the opacity of the image. So the background image. And for example, we're going to try this one. So we're going to go save maybe 49% opacity. And what that should mean is that the background image, of course, let's have a look. It should become more opaque is really what it is. So we can see through. Now, probably a better example of this is probably going to be here. And we're just going to go back to settings and we're going to change that for PowerShell in this one. So I can kind of demonstrate that one a bit better. So if we go down here, and again, it's the same idea. We're just going to go enable the opacity of that. And what we should find, hopefully, well, I can't really see it, but you can make it basically transparent and take that part to the next level as well. What would I say next? Okay, we've kind of got the background. We've kind of got the font. What we probably want to do next is add a bit more color to this and kind of showcase these special fonts. And for me, the one that I really like next is kind of a command line, or it's a PowerShell add-on really, and it's called Oh My Posh. And it helps kind of, I guess, really add a bit more context to what you're doing inside, you know, your prompt is the thing. So it's a command prompt customizer is probably the best way of doing it. So to get that, you know, I'm just going to install that. We can install it using the PowerShell gallery. We can install it using kind of winget. There's a few different ways to consume this and use it. But for me, I'm just going to install it basically here. I'm going to install Omoposh. And at that point, I'll show you kind of, we're going to import the module and I'll show you what we're kind of working with. And now what you should see, hopefully, you can see it's kind of transformed the way that my kind of command prompt is looking, or my prompt is really looking with inside this shell. Now, what it's going to say is the user I am, basically the machine I'm on, you know, the folder I'm in, what kind of shell I'm working in, and then the rest. I'm still trying to figure out what the heart is, but I'm very excited nonetheless. Now, the great thing is we can pick and choose. People have done a whole bunch of work for us already, and they've kind of configured exactly the themes that they like and how they want to see it. So what I'm going to beam up just quickly, again, it's very much like going and picking and choosing exactly what you want the theme to look like. But if we go look for themes for Oh My Posh, and you can see there's a whole heap of them already out there where people have customized it and done the work for us. And again, I'm a fan of, you know, not reinventing the wheel. So typically I just go choose the one I like the look of the most and basically rip it off and use it is the thing. So for me, at the moment, I'm using the top one, which is the M365 Princess. So we just go back up to the top. I'm a big fan of this one at the moment. This is what I'm using. So I can quickly set that as mine. And you can see I've changed my kind of posh prompt already on that one. Now, the next thing I would typically do, and kind of we're getting somewhere with this, we've kind of got custom backgrounds. You've got kind of custom different, you know, prompts. The next one I probably want to do is probably maybe add an additional kind of profile at the top. And one of the ones that I would do is go into settings and we'll choose add a new profile. Now, at the moment, I'm just going to create a new empty profile. And again, what we're going to do is we can start customizing and choosing exactly what we want. Now, for me, one of the ones that I often do is I fire up PuTTY and I use SSH. It may be that you want SSH to a server. It may be that you want to SSH to a local Raspberry Pi. Again, it's entirely up to you, and you can kind of customize how that works. But for me, we're going to just do a quick and simple one. I have a Docker host somewhere. I'm just going to set up this, and it's as simple as SSH, and it's going to be Docker, Docker S. And I'm just going to choose a machine local to me, and I'm just going to save that. Now it's going to inherit the default kind of settings that I've built in terms of the appearance. And let's just go have a look here. If we choose the drop down here, you can see I've got a brand new kind of shell available to me in terminal. So I'm just going to click on that, and all being well, you can see it's asking me for the key because this is a brand new install. I'm going to say yes, and I can log in hopefully to SSH on this. Okay, give me a second. Oh gosh, I'm sweating it now. Come on, Luke. Bingo. There we go. And at that point, we're using SSH as well now. So we've got, Windows PowerShell, we've got PowerShell 7, we've got SSH, we've got command prompt, we've got Azure Cloud Shell, and you can kind of just keep adding apps and tools to this to build out your kind of repertoire. We got some cool ways of navigating through these. So when you start having a bunch of different profiles, similar to kind of Alt Tab, Windows Tab, whatever you like, we can use Control Tab, and you can go tab through your different ones in terminal, so I can quickly swap to them, and however I'm working, I can navigate quickly through them. Again, we also have kind of the command palette to go through different settings and whatever we want to do. I think we can duplicate panes. The one that I haven't quite figured out how on earth I'm supposed to use it, but if you right click on any of these shells at the top, you can duplicate it, you can split it, you can rename it, and you can color it. The one for me is the split tab, and I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to use this one yet, but you can make more and more kind of shells within the shell. So that one for me is very much pimp my ride territory. You like shells, so we put a shell inside your shell at this point. Now, for the kind of final one that I wanted to do to kind of get there is really going to be more about kind of adding a bit more iconography to the shell. So what I'm going to do here is just open a new one, and let's go with a brand new one just to go for it. And one of my other favorite add-ons is really going to be, when I'm working in this, is going to be the terminal icons package. And this helps, again, add a bit more spice to your terminal. And again, we're just going to install this from the PowerShell gallery. So we'll wait for this one to load, and I'll kind of demo this one. And now it's as simple. For this one to work, let's just import that module, terminal icons, and hopefully I can showcase that one. So if I get child item, all being well, you can now see I've started adding additional icons to my PowerShell prompt. Again, we've got different colors, we've got different iconography, and again, it just adds a bit more flavor to what you're working with and really helps pimp it out. Now, the final thing I was going to suggest is, you can see we've opened a new tab, and that kind of oh my posh prompt has dropped off. So what I would do next is the following. You kind of want to edit your PowerShell profile to include that. So every time you launch a new kind of shell, it's going to automatically be incorporated. So I'm just going to do $profile. This is a special variable within PowerShell, so we can figure out where our PowerShell profile is. I'm just going to go open this in VS Code and quickly edit it as the one. So every time I load a PowerShell prompt, it's basically going to open whatever's in this file here. Oh, hold on, where did I go wrong? Oh dear, have I not even created it? Let's have a look. Oh dear, what a disaster. Let's go here. Oh, I figured it out. I'm a noob. Right, it's because I was working on mine previously. I didn't actually have this. We're just going to go create it from scratch and save it as. So when I was demoing this early, I actually had the file already created because I worked with it. But for the first time, you're going to have to go create it manually. So I'm just going to create my profile manually. Now, typically in this, I'm going to basically have it so it automatically loads in the oh my posh prompt and sets that one up, and also the terminal icons. So what I'm going to do, and again, it's relatively simple. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to go and get this one. But all we really want to do is import our module in here. So for example, we're going to first import basically the oh my posh module. Oh my posh. We're then going to set kind of the posh prompt theme. So set posh prompt, and we want to set that one to a different theme, which is the N365 Princess. And then we're going to also import a module, and it's going to be the terminal icons at this point. Now I'm going to save that, and everywhere I open PowerShell, it should automatically load those ones in. So let's give it a whirl. We're going to close down this terminal, reopen it, and we're going to see what happens this time. Now you can see it's taking a bit longer, but you can see automatically we've got these loaded in. So that's stored in my profile, and it's automatically loading them every time we basically load up a PowerShell prompt, whether that be in terminal and whether that be in kind of just a standalone PowerShell prompt. But for me, I would typically try to make use of terminal wherever I can now. It makes my life a lot easier. And to be honest, this is just we're just scraping the surface, really. There's a whole heap of different customizations and settings we can apply to terminal. But for me, this is the start of a 10. This is typically what I would do whenever I set up kind of a new machine. Yeah, I didn't want to cover much more than that. I wanted to kind of keep it lightweight and quite informal on this one. I think for me, the only other thing I can give you kind of a recommendation on is kind of the settings file. I'll link something afterwards or show it up, but there is a way of kind of hard linking your settings file so it can persist in your OneDrive and kind of travel with you is the important thing. So for me, rather than redoing this each and every time, you can have it so you either have this pre-built and you just copy it into the right place, or you can kind of use symlinks to make sure it's kind of ready to rock and roll if it's in your OneDrive. That was kind of it. I think I just wanted to hop back over to my deck very quickly and say a big special thanks to a number of individuals. First, for Scott, his video on the setup Windows terminal really sparked my interest in doing this talk. Jan, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the name. I don't think I'm going to get it right, unfortunately, but for all his hard work on Oh My Posh. Brandon for creating the terminal icons PowerShell module. Zeno for the fabulous Dracula theme, which I pretty much use everywhere. Jeff for the OneDrive config saving idea. And a big shout out to Gregor for basically helping me out here in terms of basically getting streaming, because I put this one together kind of last minute. I had the idea for a while, but it's only in the last week that I sat down and really started formulating it. I'll be honest, I'm not very good at recording. I feel like I'm better at just talking and not having to worry about my mistakes after I've said them. So for me, a big thanks for Gregor for helping me basically get up and running this evening and set up the stream. Now, I did plan to go for about 30 minutes, so I think I've kind of hit the mark, thankfully. Yeah, thanks for listening, and thanks for your help, Gregor, is what I would say on that one.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Luke. I've actually got a question, and then someone in YouTube's got a question. So I've obviously got a really old version of Windows Terminal. So when I go to settings, so I go to the drop down and I go to settings, it just opens up in a JSON file. It doesn't even get.
Oh, really? Yeah. So yeah. You've probably got an older version there, Gregor, unfortunately. So what I would typically, that's why I like the winget option. You can update it automatically. You can have to go up, use a command on winget, but for me, the premier option really is going to be the use of Windows Store or Microsoft Store. Right, okay. The reason being is it can automatically upgrade it in the background, because my other favorite feature in the preview now is that you can have a default prompt. So I'll show you on my own host system, and you can see there's the opacity on this one. It might be because we were in RDP, it didn't really show up very well. Yeah. But for me, the other big one that we've got in the preview is this feature here. So if we go settings, you can have a default terminal application. So the great news is wherever you are working, you might open a PowerShell prompt, it can still open terminal for you. And this is in the new preview version, we can do this one. So that one is my other favorite one. Unfortunately, I didn't want to demo it today simply because it's not available to everyone just yet. You have to use the preview builds. Okay, I did see someone I think it was Cinnamon on Twitter was basically saying they're going to try and make it the default terminal on Windows going forward. Yeah, are they really? That would be. Yeah, that's the plan. They're working on that just now. I mean, that would be absolutely awesome, because this thing blows my mind in terms of how much more functionality and how much more customizability you have in compared to standard PowerShell or basically command prompt, which is pretty much a dud now compared to this sort of stuff. It's absolutely mind blowing. One other quick question: how easy is it to create one of these profiles? See how you downloaded Dracula? Is that easy to create? Oh, so yeah, actually, that's a great question. Thanks for that one, and I'll talk you through that one very quickly. But for me, if you open settings file here, what you're going to see in my VS Code, all you got to do is choose the color palette you want here, and you can have your own kind of one. So my VS Code has a bit more kind of. I like the color picking extension that I've put in here, so I can quickly see. What is that extension? Gosh, let's have a look at extensions. And I think if we go here, we'll go have a quick scan and see if we can find it now. I've got a whole heap of kind of different ones in here, but there should be one about color picking. Hopefully, color highlight is the one I use, and that one makes it easier to so when you have someone referencing a color in a file, we can hover over it. So for me, I can see this is solarized light. But if we scroll up, let's go find. This one looks like kind of Dracula to me. This kind of feel is probably the right one. Yeah, and there you go. Sorry, just scanning over. I could tell that was Dracula, that one. So that's pretty good going, I guess.
Okay, last question was from someone called R, and they wanted to know, can you play a game like Snake in the terminal?
You know what? I have no idea, but I would imagine you can, because I'm pretty sure people have built games in PowerShell. So I would imagine that they can, yeah. I just don't have one to hand. Apologies, I don't have one ready to
No, that's cool. Okay,
but
cool.
Yeah. No, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for doing that. Lots of positive comments, and I will put the broadcast up on YouTube straight after this. I know it was live, but we'll put it up on our YouTube channel so people can look at it later. And then I'll send you the link so you can tweet it out as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for having us. Yeah, I appreciate all the positive feedback. So thanks, guys, for listening. Thanks for showing up. I would say, this is a good starter for 10 to get you going, but there's so much more content out there. There's loads of good kind of guides and tutorials around this one. For me, though, yeah, just get using it, pick it up, and give it a whirl, really. You don't have to have the most fancy customization of it to start making use of it.
Okay, Brian. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Lux, thank you. That was great. I really enjoyed that, and I've learned quite a lot, actually. I need to go and pimp my terminal.
Well, thanks a ton, man. It's appreciated, Gregor. You're a superstar, man. Thanks a ton.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys. Cheers now.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.